Well, hello.
There he is.
There he is. Can you hear us, Councillor Bjorkman? Good, good. So we got everybody aboard? Yep. We're all set to go. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Is there any conflict of interest amongst council members tonight? Seeing none, before we go any further, I would just like to say that on behalf of the town of Essex and council, I'm sure that our hearts go out to the victims and the victims' families of the shooting out in Nova Scotia. It was a senseless act of terror. So our hearts go out to them. So anyways, I need the adoption of the published agenda, please. Could I have a mover for that? Councillor Vandendolen and Councillor Bondi.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and before we go in, yes, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just one addition. Councillor Bondi has advised of a notice of motion, so we're proposing to add that as agenda item 15.1, and Councillor Bondi will speak to that at that point.
Okay, is that good? All in favor? Thank you, it's carried. Then we'll go to the adoption of the council minutes for April 6th, 2020. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Bowman and Councillor, need a seconder, please? Councillor Vandendolen. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. No public presentations tonight. And I'll let Rob carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 8.1 on the agenda under reports is the Chief Administrative Officer verbal report on COVID-19.
Okay, if we can, Rob, you can go ahead. Or Chris, pardon me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Worship. Through your Worship, I just wanted to give an update on some, I guess, some of the items that come up through the past several weeks with respect to COVID-19 and how the town is dealing with them. Number one is staffing. With respect to staffing, we continue to expand our facility separations. So we're creating additional facilities to allow for separate workplaces, keep people safe here. It's working out very well. We continue to work on protocols to ensure the safety of staff. So not only their safety within the workplace, but how we're dealing between those workplaces. So we're looking at, an interfacility mail delivery, so that we're trying to limit the contamination, right? And that's accountable on all staff. We're trying to control what we can in terms of that. So things are functioning well. Staff is been great through these changes, and really I appreciate the efforts and really how they're dealing with this has been great. So we do realize that although we're in this pandemic, there is still work to do for the town. There's still files to get through and to work on. So that's something that we continue to push through. So with respect to staffing, any questions on that before I go to the next point?
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. You to our CAO, Mr. Nepsey. If there was, heaven forbid, a case discovered or somebody tested positive in one of our facilities, would that mean that the whole facility gets shut down and all of the people working that facility, would they be sent home to quarantine? So could at some point we see like a loss of service in like one segment of our town? Do we have a plan if that happens? Say somebody at town hall gets it, does all town hall get shut down? And then, we don't have a tax department for 3 weeks. Like, are we, I guess, putting different staff from different departments in different physical buildings so that it's kind of it can run interchangeably? That's my question. Thank you.
Through your worship. So there's a couple questions in there that I'll answer, but absolutely the reason we created facility separation was to do just that. We've got similar departments working in different facilities. So we've split the tax department, we've split the clerk's department, we've split even the CAO's office. The deputy CAO and I are in different buildings. We've split, we've got the manager of building services and the building inspector in different facilities. So in the event that something happens to those staff, we have the ability to continue and function and provide the level of service that residents can expect here. Yes, with respect to protocols on the what ifs, we're actually working through a detailed kind of flow chart list per se. What do you do if you had contact with somebody? What do you do if you test positive? What do you do if you have symptoms but tested negative? And what do we do as employers? So what do we do with the facility? What do we do with the equipment? So yeah, we've worked through all those. It doesn't necessarily mean an entire shutdown of the facility and everybody in it for 14 days. The health unit and the Department of Health have given very good guidelines on how to implement those recommendations in terms of were you in close contact for prolonged time. So it's not just passing in the hallway, right? It's prolonged time with people, and there's a whole myriad of checklists that we'll go through in order to determine, I guess, what actions that we're going to take. So it's not an easy answer to give you. The protocols that we're looking to give to all staff will answer, I think, for the most part, all those scenarios. And we'll go from there. So yes, I guess we'll be ready in that event. Like you said, we hope we don't have to, but we definitely have to be prepared to do that. But we'll be the town will continue to function throughout it.
Great, thank you, Chris. Any other questions? Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, RVUs. RVUs came up on the last couple of weeks, and I've seen it come up in other municipalities, and as I'm sure you have. It's the use of RVs in a situation where people want to be socially isolated from their families, depending on whether they're quarantined or they're depending on their workplace, right? So we've definitely, similar to the municipalities around us, relaxed how we operate with that. What we ask is that the residents contact us, work through with us to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a situation otherwise that's a problem, right? We don't want these RVs blocking sidewalks. We don't want them impairing sightlines. We have to make sure that people are getting rid of the waste properly, right? And we don't want them dumping into the storm sewers, those things. But it's something that we're working through, and it's one of those case by case. Every lot is different, every RV is different. But I guess the willingness is there from the town to cooperate and work through on those situations. Another reason we ask people to contact us is so that we let the fire department know, right? The fire department knows that there's potential, people living in these, whether it's in front of their homes, beside their homes, and that way they have an understanding of tracking that one. Any questions on RVUs?
No. Okay, Chris, continue.
Okay, on to a seasonal campground use. This is something that, as this warm weather comes, you're going to see, this be more and more of an issue. Really, at the end of the day, we're here enforcing the provincial guidelines. The issue is we're waiting for a little clarification on those provincial guidelines on the ability to be open for residents where these cottages are their only permanent resident in Canada, right? Definitely it wouldn't fall in lines for the people that have a permanent residence in the county and are just weekend warrioring out to the cottage. That's not something that the intent of this would be in line for. However, if this is their only permanent residence, we definitely want a place for Canadians to stay. We'll work with those seasonal campgrounds. But the interpretation of the provincial, I guess, wording is causing some seasonal campground owners some concern. So we're waiting for clarification from the province, which I think will come as the warm weather starts to hit different areas. I guess we're getting hit with warm weather first. As warm weather starts to hit the GTA and the Muskokas, I think that it's going to be something that they're going to be forced to deal with and clarify how the use of these, how they function. Questions on seasonal campground use?
If I may, Chris, I know you've been working with the senior level. I did get a call from our member of Queen's Park, Cross, and I've been working with him on this issue too. And the issue was, just to let council know, there was a lot of campgrounds that weren't ready yet, and a lot of the winter people, they come back early this year. So that's where the problem was in a couple of the campgrounds. I know out at Ravine, I know Peter was working very hard to get it open. And I know Chris has been in contact with them quite regular to see what's happening there. So we are working with the residents on this issue. We know there is a few that stayed in motels and that, but that was out of our hands. But we're trying to speed it up as much as we can with the operators of these campgrounds. So just to give you a heads up. Thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
So the last one was essential, non-essential meetings, and this is just something I wanted to touch on, and it's something we're working through as this continues, and we don't really know where the deadline is. We're definitely, obviously, our essential meetings are moving forward. We're working through the non-essential meetings, whether it's PSBs or committee of adjustments or drainage meetings. We're working with the staff because it's not just a matter of having a meeting, it's the additional resources, both staffing and training, in order to have a virtual meeting, right? There's a lot that's going on behind the scenes here to make these function as smoothly as we've been having. So it's working through that. We'll definitely get there, I think, but it's just, requesting that people are patient. We're not, pushing people aside to not meet. We just have to make sure that everything's in order. We definitely want town business to continue, and we'll work towards that.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to our CAO. I see that we're hosting Court of Revisions at the end of May. Just how would members, I'm just curious, because a Court of Revision is, people go to them and talk about their drainage assessment. How would one of the Court of Revisions work when members of the public may not be able to Zoom in? Could you just explain that for us, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is the clerk. Just to answer Councillor Bondi's question, if the resident, so the statutory notice that already went out has contact details if someone wishes to be a delegate at that meeting. So they have the option of either being a delegate through Zoom if they can. If they can't, we give them information so that they can call in for the meeting and present their concerns as a delegate.
Thank you.
One more thing to add to the list.
Yes, Chris. Go ahead,
sorry.
Chris.
This is still with respect to the COVID updates. It's not on the list, but it's just something I want you to know. I mean, we're continuing to push information out. The mayor is having his updates. We're continuing to update our residents. And we're getting into that next level of kind of questions and FAQs where we're trying to, answer the questions for residents like, can I still build a fence? Can I, I know I can't put a house in, but can I put a pool in? Can I, still provide, have this service? So we're trying to enhance, I guess, the information as we move down the road here and provide more detail on what people can and can't do when we're in this pandemic. So look for more information, I guess, coming your way.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions? So on the report, could I have a mover to receive it, please? I need a mover to receive it. Councillor Van Dolen and Councillor Verbeek. All in favor? All in favor, please.
Okay, okay, you saw.
Thank you. It's carried. Thank you.
Eight point two on this evening's agenda is Economic Development Report 2020-03, read March 2020 Building Report, and this is together with the Development Overview. This is for receipt for Council's information purposes this evening.
Have a mover, please, for the report. Seconder, please.
Who's the mover?
Councillor Bowman and Councillor Van Dolen. Any questions on the report? Councillor Bjorkman.
Not a question, it's more of a statement. It's pretty incredible that up to this point in the year, we're at $14 million in permits for building, and the big one, additions and renovations, is at $4.5 million. Tremendous amount of work being done in our town comparative to any time. So great job, really good work from our building department, all of our planners. This is what we're after. And even as bad as things are with COVID, this is still marching on. So a very good report. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Just to add to that, you see a lot of people doing renovations today. You know, if you're out, if you have to go for groceries or anything, you'll see people doing renovations, and that I see it all over on our concession roads, which is a good sign. Things are happening. Councillor Van Dolen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I noticed that a multiple residential shows 0, and we've got an apartment building going up. I just wondered about that omission. Thanks.
He was talking about the apartment building. Can you come back again? I didn't catch you, Councillor Van Dolen. Go ahead.
Yeah, the multiple residential category is empty, and there should be like a $12 million project in that category. Not for the month, but for year to date.
Okay, Councillor, I believe that was last year's. That was in last year's.
When they got their permit.
Yeah, when they got their permits last year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Anybody else from council? Okay, all in favor of the report? It's carried. Thank you.
Eight point three on this evening's agenda is Economic Development 2020-04, the Community Improvement Plan update for the first quarter of 2020. For receipt by council this evening, and I believe Mr. Mayor, our Director of Development Services, Lori Chadwick, was going to speak to this item.
Thank you. Lori, are you there? If you want to speak on this, please.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I won't go through every single detail. I just wanted to inform the Economic Development Report as presented is intended to be a quarterly update on the CIP programs. What Nelson has prepared for us, Mr. Silvera has prepared for us, is really just an overview of where we are today, or rather from the months of January to the end of March. Our intention is to provide you with these updates on a quarterly basis leading up to year end. So you can see that the completed projects for now are not in the hundreds of thousands, and we're not nearly at the end of the year. So we're in good shape. We have a couple of applications where CIP funds have been granted. And then we also have applications where, we have inquiries out there, although not in the form of applications at this time, but that design work is in progress, and that we would potentially be providing those grants in the near future. What I can also share with you is, I think off the report, or the topic of the report, is that our Economic Development Officer is working very hard to redirect strategy, his recent strategies on working with the businesses in this time. For example, you may have seen two different programs in the recent weeks. One program, rather not a program, but a procedure that he's gathering information through the survey for local businesses. So that survey was out about 2 weeks ago. We're just gathering the data, and we're hopefully going to use that data to help us help those businesses and how we can prepare, or how we can help those businesses perhaps in sharing information from the province or the federal government for assistance, just to provide that additional resource for our local businesses. On the flip side, for tourism, we're also, our economic development officers working closely with our communications manager to redirect efforts as well into that tourism industry. And what does that mean? And recently you've seen the 12 days of giveaways, and that was quite a success in boosting some marketing and boosting that direction to some of those local businesses, and getting the word out, and bringing in tourism in other alternative methods. So in the near future, we will also be rolling out some additional ideas, additional programs. We're working on, in conjunction with our GIS analysts, we're also working on a business map on kind of an open for business in Essex, and looking at combining information from our local businesses into a geographical, mapping tool. So that's also on its way. We are doing what we can now to support those businesses. So the CIP report may be something that you see as just a snippet of what Mr. Silvera does. We are working behind the scenes 24/7 on doing what we can to support those businesses, the tourism industry as well here in the town.
Thank you, Laurie. Before we go any farther, Councillor Bowman, can you hear us? You can. Okay, you have. Okay, great. Is there any questions from council for Laurie at all? No. So for the report, could I have a mover, please, for the report? Councillor Van Dolen and Councillor Verbeek. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
.4 on this evening's agenda is Drainage Report 2002, appointment of an engineer under Section 78 of the Drainage Act to review the Barrett Drain for receipt, and that council appoints Root Engineering under Section 78 of the Drainage Act.
Can I have a mover, please? Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
.5 on the agenda this evening, Infrastructure Services 2020-02, Windsor Essex Region Stormwater Management Standards Manual. For receipt, and that council adopt the Windsor Essex Region Stormwater Management Standards Manual as the standard for design and review of infrastructure within the town of Essex. And I believe Mr. Mayor, our Director of Infrastructure Services, Kevin Gerard, will speak to this matter.
Thank you. Kevin, when you're ready.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yeah, so as the report indicates, there's a strong need to adopt a regional guideline to make sure that, we're following all the regional, guidelines of what IRCA is expecting, and to protect our own infrastructure to ensure that pre-development rates and runoff are similar to what we're putting in our infrastructure, so that we don't have negative downstream effects. So as you can see in the report, the guideline was created in a partnership with IRCA, the City of Windsor, and the other neighboring municipalities. This was done to, like I said, basically just to regionalize what everybody is doing. So we're all following the same guideline. And what this will do is it will actually provide everything to be give clear direction to developers and to engineers so that everybody is on the same playing field, essentially. It will provide a consistent watershed approach. And what it will also do is segue into our development manual that is to be completed in 2020, so that we are adopting these stormwater guidelines now to be incorporated into that development manual for future development and existing.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions from council? Councillor Benino? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, first of all, I didn't see it in the report, but I'm assuming that the local building and development industries were consulted. Like a yes or no on that. And also, where do we stand compared to other regions? Are we in catch-up mode? Have other regions already got this, or are we ahead of the curve? Just like to know where we stand there. Thank you.
Sure, I can answer those questions.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, there was a board that was put together and a working group that was put together to develop this stormwater management manual. And what it did was it used that partnership with industry practices and using developers, using contractors, and our neighboring municipalities develop the manual. As far as where we are regionally compared to other regions, the original stormwater management guidelines were created by the Ministry of Environment. They're quite dated, but still effective and used today. So many regions are still using just the Ministry of Environment guidelines. But because, like my report mentions, it says that the watershed is in this area is very unique. We're a very flat municipality, and it requires additional measures in order to protect our region and our infrastructure. So I would say that we're a bit ahead of the curve, especially considering that we're not using just the provincial guidelines, but also something specific to our watershed and specific to improve our actual infrastructure.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions from council? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship, to Mr. Gerard. I know quite often we have measurements of our draining, our stormwater is handled in a 1 in 100 year storm. What is the improvement to this? Does it change the standard in the sense of the worst storm in how many years are we looking at in this scenario with this report?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We still use a 1 in 100 year storm as a guideline. That a site needs to be able to retain that 1 in 100 year storm and also assess the runoff which would happen during that storm. But it also implemented a stress test as well, which would be a storm greater than the 1 in 100 year storm, to evaluate how in these unique circumstances where we're seeing these large storms happening more frequently, exactly how the system would react and that property would react in the event of a large storm of that nature.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say a couple things on this as well. We've been waiting for this since 2015. This has been, not that it's been worked on, but I mean, it really came to light when we had our flooding issues. And for all of our municipalities, the city of Windsor, the county of Essex, and just one area, but it works for the entire county is fantastic. It's really what we've been waiting for and we're driving on. And part of it, as they say here, it was the Stantec was one of the major engineers on this, and Stantec knows Essex. They know every part of Essex. They've done our mapping in our centers. They understand how it works here for us. So just to have them being a partner as well really puts Essex in good standing in the way that this this stormwater plan comes together for us. So I just think it's fantastic. There's a standard to use. There's still allowed deviations. Developers can still, if something special is in there are things they can do. So nobody's held to a stringent. I mean, there's a standard, but there's always exceptions, and they've got wording in here to allow that, which is so important for our developers and our builders. So I just want to congratulate everybody that was involved. This is a long time coming, and really going to make things easier for our builders moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Chris, our CEO had...
Councillor Bondi.
Oh, Councillor Bondi, you can go first. Councillor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you maybe to our Director of Infrastructure, Kevin Gerard. This is great. I've been waiting for this too. I think it's something that we can earmark all of our development going forward, but is there anything that we can have, like when we're reviewing current situations where, you know, I just got a call the other day where a house was built really high next to another house. So does this help us going back at all? My guess is not. But what do we have going backwards retroactively? Do we just troubleshoot one off? Is there anything we could do to help people who feel like development right now might make them flood? Like I do realize we've had huge improvements in flooding, but there still might be little pockets. So how can we help those little pockets? Because I think going forward, we're going to be good, but we still may have some bad pockets.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, the actual guideline is a guideline, right? It's a standard manual for us to use for the future. So we can't necessarily retroactively put these measures on people. What it would do is and we've already been using it at the town of Essex, right? Since its inception, because the guideline is there as a guideline. It can only be put on people as the development comes to light or through site plan agreement or those types of to use as a guideline, right? So if there are circumstances where you have issues of water shedding onto other properties, sometimes those are something that would be handled through bylaw or through property standards. So those are typically handled on a case-by-case basis. So as those things come up, you could always notify us at the Infrastructure Services Department, who can kind of direct you a little bit better as to who would handle that the best. But unfortunately, the guidelines are used for future development.
Okay, go ahead. Is there anybody else? Councillor Vandendolen? Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I previously asked a question, but now I just want to make a statement. I didn't see it anywhere in here, and maybe I missed it, but I had hoped that somewhere in this report it would make some kind of statement about the historical state of these lands. And it says, okay, it's flat and we have clay soils, but I don't think a lot of our residents know, and I think a lot of our developers and builders forget when it's convenient for them, that this town was built on a swamp. You can't see it here, but here in my home office, I have a historical map of the county on the wall. And a lot of people don't realize that the reason Highway 3 cuts on that weird angle from Windsor all the way down to Leamington was that was the demarcation line between the inhabitable part of Essex and the uninhabitable mosquito-infested swamp that Essex was built in. And I think if there was some sort of statement that this is our history and this is where we come from, that it would make it a lot easier going forward when we have disputes with people, both residents and builders, about where they can build things and why they have to build to certain standards. Because I've read a little bit about this over the years. Maybe somebody could put together a paper on it, but it's really remarkable that we were able to settle a town here and to farm this property. It was so wet. And I think people forget that sometimes. And maybe this document is a place where we can remind them of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else from Council? Chris, you had a few words there.
Yeah, just to add to this, and this is really from my point of view, the CAO's point of view. This is in terms of regional agreement. This is really something that the whole region has come together on. and it's quite impressive when you think of all the functions of that we have with our neighbors, and you know how hard it can be sometimes to get on the same page with these things. This is something where, yeah, each of those municipalities are in full agreement of this. Multiple have adopted it. They're all using it, and it's really making us better as a region, and ensuring that our stormwater is protected, even as it's flowing from one municipality to the others, right? So that we're not impacting our neighbors negatively. So it's really kudos to the county as far as all the municipalities. It's nice to see, and I think moving forward, it's really paved the way to work regionally on other things and other initiatives.
Thank you, Chris. So to the report, I need a mover to receive the report, please. Councillor Van Dolen and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
.6 on the agenda this evening is Drainage Report 2003, appointment of an engineer under Section 78 of the Drainage Act to install a new culvert over the North Rear Road drain south side. That said report be received and that council appoint route engineering pursuant to Section 78 of the Drainage Act.
Okay, I need a mover on this report, please. Councillor Bowman, and need a seconder, Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
.7 on the agenda this evening is Corporate Services Report 2020-01, re Town of Essex Shoreline Assistance Loan Program. And this is together with authorizing bylaw 1908. That said report be received, that council authorizes the implementation of the program and to further authorize administration to enter into property owner agreements with successful applicants. That bylaw 1908 to authorize this program be passed this evening, and that administration be directed to come back to council with bylaws to authorize the imposition of said works as special charges on properties that participate in this program, all in accordance with the general guidelines of the program and the property owner agreements. And to that end, Mr. Mayor, myself together with the Director of Corporate Services, we can either answer council's questions or I don't know if they want us to provide more information or an overview. I'll leave that to council's wish.
Great. This is a great program. I'm glad it's setting up. Is there any questions from council on this report here? I know we've been waiting for a while. Councillor Bondi, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our staff, I think a lot of work went into this. I think it's something that we should really be proud of our staff and how thorough they were on this. And I've been getting some questions, and I did talk to staff today to get some of those answered, to pass them along to some of the people that asked me. But another one came up. So whether it be to the clerk or to Mr. Morrison, one more question that I got was, what happens if the property value becomes less than enough to satisfy all of the debts owing on the property? So not necessarily the break wall or the shoreline works, but say a resident has a lien against the house as well. Is there any way we can rest assured on the approval that the residents aren't overextending themselves? Say the break wall then does fail and the property is worth nothing. Like, are we on the hook then? So I know that might be a bit of a complicated question that we might not even have an answer to right now, but that's the last one I have. Thank you.
Can you answer that? Would Jeff answer that?
Yeah, I can answer that through the chair. It's very complicated and very hypothetical. The loan program is structured in a way that we would loan up to 30% of the total assessed value. So we would only be lending up to 30% of the total assessed value for that shoreline work. we would have a priority lien status, and under the Assessment Act and Municipal Act, where we register after 2 years of tax arrears, it puts us in a position where we can collect on the potential debt. The very hypothetical part is if that property, the shoreline, does fail excessively early and wash that property out to the lake. I can't predict that, and I can't begin to estimate that. The permit that would be received through IRCA would indicate the type of work that they would need to be done, and the loan would be structured in a way that it wouldn't exceed the estimated useful life of that asset. So if that shoreline, the max we can go up to under the program is 10 years. So if that shoreline lasted 20 years, the loan would be for 10 years. So we have a potential additional 10 years in there to mitigate it.
Thank you, Jeff. Does that answer your question, Councillor? Okay, good. Councillor Van Andel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Morrison. Congratulations, Mr. Morrison. That's a great achievement. I hope some other communities take note and perhaps copy us even. I think you've touched on these answers in previous questions, but I'd like to go over them again. How many properties have expressed, or the owners of how many properties have expressed interest in this program? How many do you think are the limit that we're going to service through these agreements? And is there a limit on how much we can fund? Thank you.
Through the chair, there's been approximately 20 properties that have expressed interest through the preliminary. We've been in contact with them, and all 20 seem to be interested still. Some are at various stages. Some have gotten IRCA permits. Some are waiting and seeing. Based on discussions with the financial institution, we have set about a $2 million estimate on the project right now. And depending on if the uptake meets that quickly, then we would report back to council. We also would plan on reporting back to council annually or regularly, depending on what the uptake looks like.
Good. Anybody else from council? Councillor Bjorkman. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, trouble with that green button again. Thank you, sir. Again, I want to go back over this. I know that Mr. Morrison's been working on this a while. When I was out running, when we were running for council in the last election, I was meeting people on the lake, and they were asking, what can we do about this? And honestly, again, I want to thank our department, Mr. Morrison and his team, for putting this work together. This is upper tier government responsibility. This is something that is supposed to be provided by the federal government and the provincial government in these areas. And our municipality is now has a program where we can help our residents. That's fantastic. It's that kind of work and that teamwork, that extra thinking out of the box that gets these things done for the residents here. So it's just another thing, for our residents to know. That's what's being provided here. So again, I feel like this is my night to gush over everything that's going on. But I'm really happy with it. It's fantastic. So thank you very much, and congratulations on the work.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Malash, you were next.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm very proud of our administration, particularly Jeff Morrison, for putting this together and his team. But I can see other applications, perhaps, going forward, and that's what I love about this. I know at some point in time, and it's been talked about for years, that the provincial government's going to come along and have all rural septic systems checked. And I think there's going to be a lot of systems that are going to have to be replaced. And that's a huge expense for those homeowners too, very much like a break wall. And, they can be $30,000 to $40,000. And if someone is hit with that kind of a bill, nobody's ever prepared to have that kind of an expense come up unexpectedly. So if the province moves forward on something like that, and I can see that at some point in time they will, because like I said, they've been talking about doing it for years. Maybe this type of a program would be the kind of program that would help those residents be able to afford over a period of time. And, you know, we're assisting them getting the money that they need to be able to move forward with the project. And again, it goes on property taxes. So I'm not sure how long these loans are going to be spread out over. And that's another question that I had. But I do see other applications that we can use this for. So my question again to Mr. Morrison is, do we know how long this is going to be spread out, any of these expenses?
Through the chair, the longest term that we can provide is 10 years through the financial institution. We had discussions previously about going beyond that, but then we would have to utilize town reserves. Whole goal program was to utilize outside lending. It really is just to provide an additional tool to individuals. Because at the end of the day, going through a homeowner's line of credit, you can get it at 5%. Going through a personal loan, it's sitting at 10 to 12%, or an unsecured line of credit, you're at 7 to 10%. So it's just providing another tool and an interest rate that's attractive to residents so they can borrow at a more aggressive rate. I appreciate all the kudos from everybody. However, I'd like to say thanks to the CAO and all the directors and their teams for all the effort that's gone into this. And it was truly a team effort. And I want to personally thank our clerk, Rob Augert, for the time that he's put into it and the attention that he's paid to it. And it's appreciated, and IRCA and outside parties. So thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. And Jeff, thank you for all the hard work you put into it, because you were the driving force, I believe, behind this. To Deputy Mayor Malash, when you got talking about septic systems and senior levels of government, they're going to have to pitch in. If you recall, I'm sure you do, Deputy Mayor, back, I think it was probably 18, 20 years ago when IRCA had that program out for assistance. I believe at the time it was $8,000 or $10,000 towards a septic system. And you're right. We can go down any road in our municipality today, and I'll guarantee you that probably 60 to 70% of the septic systems do not work properly. But I agree with you that the government's going to have to step in and do something. If we're going to stop the algae bloom in our lake, in our Great Lakes, this is part of the problem. So I agree 100% with you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Any other questions from council? So on the report, could I have a mover on the report, please?
The report
and all the recommendations, Councillor Van den Dolen and Councillor Darren. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
.8 on this evening's agenda, Legal and Legislative Services Report 2020-05, quarter revision for the Bayless Drain. And this is together with bylaw 1904 for provisional passage this evening, being a bylaw to provide for the Bayless Drain bridge replacements and maintenance schedule. For receipt, that the following members of the Drainage Board, Kirk Carter, Percy Dufour, and Luke Martin, be appointed to sit as members of the quarter revision. That's been scheduled for 4:30 p.m. on May 21st, that they be so appointed, and that bylaw 1904 receive 2 readings this evening.
Good. Could I have a mover, Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bowman? Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Oh, was there a question? No, I thought he was just. Oh, no, he was just voting.
Item 8.9 on the agenda, Operations Report 2020-01, results of request for tender for the supply of tandem drum asphalt compactor. That said report be received, and that council awards the request for tender to Casera Group Tecumseh in the amount of $52,406.40, and that council approves the additional funding of $2,406.40 above the allocated capital budget through transferring from the development charges reserve.
Have a mover on this recommendation, please. Councillor Van Dolan and Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship. I'm not sure who asked. I'll just point it to our CAO. What's the purpose of this purchase? Can you please remind me?
Actually, Deputy Mayor Malash, I'm going to put you over to Kevin, as the drum roller would fall in infrastructure services. They actually did basically a cost analysis on what we were renting, on what we could use it for. But I'll let Kevin provide some additional information that way.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Chris is correct. It was identified through a cost analysis, looking at the amount of money that we were spending on rentals for this roller and the work that we do with asphalt patching and some of the prepping that we're doing by taking it in-house. That we would require a roller that would be, we would be paying this off within 5 years, based on the amount that we're paying for rentals.
Okay. Good.
Thank you. Good plan.
Any other questions? I have a question to Kevin. Do you have a figure what it was costing us for rental a year? Any idea?
I don't have the figure in front of me, but I can certainly provide that to council if that's your wish.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. All in favor of that report? No. Do we have a motion? I need a motion. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Verbeek. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Eight point 10 on the agenda, Capital Works and Infrastructure Report 2020-03, results of request for tenders, supply of 3 pickup trucks. That said report be received and that council awards the request for tender to Kennap Ford in the amount of $117,652.87, including trade-in value and non-refundable HST.
Have a mover, please. Councillor Darren and Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions on this? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Through your worship, I just wanted to ask, there's quite a bit of savings actually on this. I'm just wondering, are these fully equipped, these vehicles? I know in the past that we've had to, after we've purchased, add like a toolbox to the back or lighting on the trucks, additional lighting, maybe adding communication equipment inside the cab. Is this an all-in cost, or are there other costs associated with this?
Kevin, can you answer that? Kevin?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The trucks are partially outfitted with the extra gear that is needed, but there are some additional costs that are required to outfit the pickups for the individual departments.
Well, the additional monies you're saying that we're saving on the purchase is actually not a savings. There's other costs that are associated in finishing these off.
Correct. There is some budget money allocated in the capital budget to outfit the vehicles as well.
Oh, so that's separate from this purchase? No,
sorry. It's all lumped together, but we haven't shown it in the actual schedule, but that we will require the extra money to outfit the vehicles. Each department has different requirements of what they need to outfit the vehicles. So because they're funded from 3 different, they have individual costs.
Okay, good. I just wanted to know if these were actual savings or not. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions? Councillor Bjorkman or Councillor Vandendal, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, sort of a half facetious question. I hope that there's some Windsor-built engines in these 3 Ford trucks.
Thumbs up, eh, Councillor? Okay, good. Any other questions on this? Okay, to the recommendation, please. I need a mover. Oh, I have a mover and a second. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
(8.11) on the agenda is Planning Report 2020-06, Climate Change Adaptation Plan, Progress Report 1. Said report is on the agenda this evening for Council's information purposes and for receipt.
You have a mover, please, Deputy Mayor Malash, and I need a seconder, please, Councillor Verbeek. Any questions on this report? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Just some feedback that I just wanted to provide to the Climate Change Committee and to our administration that are part of this committee. I read through the report and I like the direction that they're going, and I saw some of the statements where they're looking at wild weather and the amount of hydro flickers that will be coming forward because of or power outages coming forward because of the hot weather. So I think it's important that because I haven't heard that we're doing this yet, but we own Elk Utility, and Elk should be part of this. We should be looking at how our utility is also planning for climate change. They have a great report that they provide every year about climate change initiatives that they do in their office. But I think that we should bring them into this as one of the companies that we own and make sure that they are aligning, what they need to do to prevent vulnerable populations from power outages and everything. So that's just something that I came in mind because we've got members from agriculture, business, all sectors, but we forgot one of the major companies, one of our major assets. I think that we could incorporate them going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If you could forward that to one of the members that sit on the board, maybe we could bring that forward to the to one of the board meetings. So, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, to the report. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, item 9, reports from youth members. Both of our youth members, Ava Hoffman and Cameron Susie, have sent their regrets this evening. However, they did ask if Councillor Verbeek could speak on their behalf.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Verbeek, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just have some brief notes from our youth counselors. Ava Hoffman has said that she's going to be busy tonight in a Google meeting with her teachers, so she's unable to attend and sends her regrets. Ava, she's in 11th grade and she's in the fast tracking program, so she has some really challenging and advanced classes right now, and she's finding the online classes a real struggle because she has a tough enough semester to begin with. And she just wanted us to know that her and her family have been sheltering in place. Her parents have been working from home for quite some time. And so like the rest of us, she'd like to see this come to an end soon. Now, Cameron Susie, he says that he definitely, when this is over, he will, moving forward, he is going to make it known that he strongly opposes the mandatory online learning that the province is pushing for. He says there's a lot of unfair challenges involved with this, and he has a list of reasons why the province should not move forward making these e-classes mandatory. He also says he wants us to know that he's disappointed in the amount of people that are still not respecting social distancing. Otherwise, he too is looking forward to things getting back to, or at least closer to normal. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Item 10 under the agenda, any updates from County Council?
I don't have any. The only thing I can say is at the last county meeting we had, the big issue was COVID. 19, and we discussed that quite a bit, eh? Or Deputy Mayor Malash. Other than that, it was business as usual. I don't think there was anything that really come up. So nothing there. Thank you.
Item 11.1 on the agenda is correspondence for receipt. That all of the correspondence on agenda item 11.1 be received and where indicated to further share using suitable methods of communication.
So I need a mover on the correspondence, please. Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Bowman. Any questions on any of the correspondence? Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to address 1.1.6, which is the town of Midland. Their proposal to have the federal government send us money so that nobody has to pay tax this year. I think that's something for receipt and not to support. There's a lot of, that's a great idea. I don't know where that money comes from. It would really have to be something that was fleshed out a lot more than just this statement. So I move, that we just received that we don't support it.
I agree. I agree with you 100% on that one, Councillor. I think if we all did that, we'd be in trouble here. But these are all just for receipt. Oh, these are all just for receipt anyways. Receipt.
They asked us to support.
No support, just receipt.
Okay. And then the other one I'd like to speak to is 1.3.
Oh, we're not there yet.
Yeah, just the Midland one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, can Jeff comment on the Midland?
Yeah, Jeff, can you comment on Midland? Jeff, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah,
sure. Through the chair, I agree. I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't think it's financially feasible looking for 100% reduction or even out of 50% reduction. From the beginning of this whole process, the CEO and I have had discussions about tax policy and what could be done. And one of the opinions was that if the province did provide a grant in the form of a percentage of your total assessment to each municipality, it could be equitable and it could be financially feasible. And that way it could be passed down through the property tax base through an adjustment of the mill rate. But it wouldn't provide a huge impact to individuals because the cost would add up so quickly. You look at gas tax, for example, we get $1 million and it's based on a formula that's predetermined, and the total value of that entire program is hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So based on the request as it stands, I agree with comments of council that it wouldn't be financially feasible.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to comment very briefly on the piece of correspondence from the Alcohol and Gaming Commission, 11.1.3. I put that on there. That it's a notification of public notice. It's very similar to what we receive through the clerk's office when it comes to liquor license applications, except this one here is an application for a cannabis retail store authorization. So in this instance, this provides for a 15-day notice period, and either the municipality as a whole or any resident for that matter can file either a written submission or an objection with the AGCO, either online or I believe they can submit it hard copy as well. And so normally, in this case here, I did the same thing that I do for our liquor license applications. I circulated that notice through other departments here at the municipality. This particular application pertains to 68 Talbot Road North, and it's an application by a company called Rural Cannabis Company. So we did receive, I circulated for comment. We did receive comments from the planning department. The planning department confirms that although the property has the appropriate zoning to support a cannabis retail store, it does appear to be within 150 meters of a sensitive land use, in that there's a place of worship within that 150 meters, it appears, and a private school, being the Rock of Help Christian Center at 43 Fox Street. So it appears to be within the setback required. That is a determination that that the AGCO would make, but normally the course here would be that the clerk's office would put together a written submission to the AGCO, advising them of any comments that we received by other departments here at the town, and just asking them to take that into consideration in their final decision. While the town, as council knows, while the town opted in for retail cannabis back in January 2019, it's really, the final decision really comes down and is made by the AGCO registrar. They'll consider all written submissions, and even the applicant themselves. If a resident or a municipality makes a submission, either objecting or just providing comments, which is what I'm proposing, then the applicant has a period of time, I believe it's a relatively quick period of time, 5 days, to provide a response. Once the AGCO register gets all that information, they then make a final decision. So to my knowledge, this is the first formal notification I've received with respect to a cannabis retail store authorization. So we thought it was important to put that on the agenda for council's information.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions at all? Oh, Councillor Bjorkman, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. That is the one I did want to speak to. When I looked at the 1.13, I just saw the media release and didn't go with my notes. I'm not as organized sitting here in my house as I am there. Yeah, that was one of the things we looked at, was that does fit within the area that's within 150 meters of a school. So it doesn't, it shouldn't go in that location. And I think that we should state that. He knows how I feel about, having had the experience of a store next door to one of our properties that in the core like that, store to store to store, there's a lot of issues that come along with that. So I think if it doesn't fit the government's own definition of where a store should be, then we should certainly say that we're not in favor of having that store there. So I would certainly ask that we make that clear when we respond, that we don't believe that is a suitable location for that store. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vandendolen, you had a question too?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Through you, unlike Councillor Bjorkman, I'm not so entirely opposed to the location, and I was going to suggest that we ask the church and the school whether they're opposed to this, because Main Street is a suitable location for a liquor store. Why can't it be a suitable location for a cannabis outlet? I know Councillor Bjorkman has his issues with the smells and other problems he had living next to, owning his own store next to a cannabis outlet. But I don't think even legally or morally we can accuse this store before it opens of being that bad already. We have voted in favor of having a cannabis outlet. I think the Main Street is a fine place for it. So I think we should try and make this happen, because this is what we voted for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Guerin?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm a little bit confused. I see the application here. My understanding was that AGCO wasn't accepting any applications. Is this actually a pending application And has the government flexed the rules on population and who can even get a license?
Go ahead, Rob, can you answer it?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I believe they did open it up a while back. I believe this is a pending application, and I believe the deadline for submissions is, it's April 24th. The only other, if I can, Mr. Mayor, the only other comment I would make is that from the municipality's perspective, I was just going to send a written submission advising of the fact that it doesn't appear to be within the, it appears to be in violation of the 150 meters setback. And then, and then basically ask the register to take that into consideration. I would suggest through you, Mr. Mayor, that if council's wish is to be a bit stronger and formally object, we'd probably need a resolution to that effect.
Councillor Guerin, anything else? Councillor Verbeek?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to support what Councillor Bjorkman had pointed out, and then our clerk looks like he's already got it covered. I think we do need to respond, reminding them that, the government put those guidelines in place for a reason, and we as council should expect that this applicant meet those guidelines. And proximity to a church and a school would break both, a couple of them. So I would support what the clerk is suggesting, and maybe even use a little stronger language. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we need a motion then? We need somebody to make a motion. Councillor Verbeek, are you willing to make a motion to that effect? Councillor Verbeek, go ahead and state your motion, please. Councillor Verbeek, state your motion.
I think she's on audio.
Sorry, I'm very sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. We got you now. Go ahead.
Just that I would support the clerk's suggestion that we do send a letter that the applicant is not meeting the guidelines set out by the province. So it's really not up to us to accept or deny it anyway, right? So I think that we do need to forward the letter that the clerk suggested to the province that the application doesn't meet the guidelines. I don't know what I've done to my screen either.
Okay, that's okay. That's your motion though, right?
Yes.
Okay, I need a seconder for that motion. Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor of that motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? Opposed? Councillor Van Dolan is opposed. That's it. It's carried. Thank you. Any other correspondence in the report that you want to speak on? Okay, seeing none, okay, we'll move on. Thank you.
Item 13 on the agenda this evening under financial is the bank payment report from March 2020, and this bank report be ratified as submitted by council this evening.
I need a mover, please, on the report. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Item 15 on the agenda this evening, as added to the adoption agenda, is a notice of motion from Councillor Bondi. Councillor Bondi, if you can state your motion, and this is just for presentment this evening. It presumably will come back to the first meeting in May for consideration.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, that the motion be presented that the town of Essex do an online satisfaction survey similar to the one that the town of Tecumseh has recently done to look at quality of life indicators core services and to see if the town is going in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Item 16, Mr. Mayor, any reports and announcements from the council members this evening?
I'll start with Councillor Guerin. Any reports?
No, none tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Bjorkman.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to just notice that in Colchester, we've got a lot of people that are coming down to Colchester to the park. The road is busy every day. They drive along and they come down to the ramp and they have a look and see that the ramp's closed and go to the overlook at the upper parking lot. But people really are practicing social distancing. They are not gathering in the park. They're not gathering at the beach. It's very good. They need to get out. People need to get out. They're walking their dogs. They're walking with maybe a child, but are really doing the job of social distancing down here. And it would be so easy to not do it, especially the nice days that we've had. But people really are taking care of each other and watching out for them. So I just wanted to say that it's very nice to see down here that they're taking care of business that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bowman, anything? Councillor Bondi, anything? Deputy Mayor Malash?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Verbeek? I can't hear you, Councillor Verbeek. You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly again, I really do tonight when I was reading my my package yesterday, I just want to shout out to our staff, to our CAO and his team. The things that were in tonight's meeting reflect very clearly how hard they've been working on our behalf and for the town and for the people of the town. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van den Dolen, anything?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank I've been watching at home on YouTube, and I want to thank the 25 to 30 people who've been watching us all night. And I hope that when we start streaming on a regular basis from our regular meetings, that we get higher viewership. Thank you.
Thank you. To myself, I just want to speak on the COVID virus. Just to let council know and the citizens of our municipality, and I'm going to speak probably for the citizens of Canada. I'm very disappointed in Michigan, the way it's going on over there. That I really don't get it, where residents feel we have to get these businesses open right away. I think that we're at the curve with this virus, and I think our senior level of government is doing one great job. It doesn't matter who's in there. They're doing a good job to stop the spread. But it's very, very disappointing when you have your neighbor across the river allowing the beaches to open in Florida, and that's a big disappointment. I thought moving forward we were on top of this virus, but the way it's going right now, I don't know. But that's my opinion, and I'm very disappointed in the U.S. government for allowing this to happen. So, thank you. Yep.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, moving on to bylaws this evening. Bylaws for third and final reading. 1906, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings from the April 6, 2020 regular council meeting.
Mover, Councillor Bowman, and need a second, Councillor Van den Dolen. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Bylaw 1900, being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of money to meet current expenditures of the town of Essex. For 3 readings this evening.
Mover, please. Councillor Guerin and Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
And bylaw 1909 for 2 readings this evening, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this April 20th regular council meeting.
Mover, please. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Carried. And I need a mover for adjournment, please. Mover, Councillor Bjorkman and Deputy Mayor Milosh, all in favor. And council, thank you very much. I know the meeting went pretty well tonight overall, and I think let's stay safe and move forward. I know it's hard to stay in the house. I know it is. I know it's very hard to stay cooped up, and I'm guilty of myself going for a ride once in a blue moon, but it's very hard. But let's try to beat this COVID and stay safe. And if you know anybody, council, if you know anybody at all that's in need of help, please let's share the information so we can help them. Thank you.